Yes, I'm here. And let me go ahead and remind people that I'm live at Bada Bada Boom. That one. And I forgot to copy this little URL right here. And I know nobody's watching yet, so hey. And one last thing, I'm going back up here to Facebooky. Anyway, poke a little hole in the comment. Close that. And come on, okay. And that should be it. And that should be good for now. And right now, the only person watching is me. I realize this means I might not get a lot of people watching because people aren't prepared. They're not ready for me to be going like, "Arr!" Oh, I also realized I forgot to change over to my appropriate switch count to, there we go. That's better. And pop out chat so I can see it, because I'm trying something different tonight with actually broadcasting what I'm seeing, so that you get to see the actual, drop down menus and stuff like that. And I see there's 4 of us watching now. Thank you, welcome. Here in about another 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to actually get into sculpting. And I'm probably going to make another goblin. This one's probably going to be a lot meaner or nastier, based on the migraine I had yesterday that prevented me from sculpting live online yesterday. They kind of do that, So, like I said, I'm trying, this time, instead of having individual windows in my XSplit setup for the individual programs I use, I'm just going to capture the whole screen so you can see my various menus and stuff like that. So, first thing we got to do is we're going to go ahead and close this window. Yeah, that makes things easier. And here I'm going to switch to an infinite series of echoes for just a moment. Bing. Boy. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is my basic geometry figure here. And a lot of you already know it, some of you don't. And what I will be doing is determining what I'm going to do to this schmuck. Poor schmuck, you know. First thing, of course, we gotta turn him into a goblin. So, beep, he's a goblin. Yep, that's all it took, he's a goblin. The next thing that we're gonna do is, okay, what are we gonna give him? What's he going to be carrying as a goblin? How about we make him a two-weapon fighter? You know, 2 weapons, yeah. Well, one of the first things we need to do is turn this back off. File, import, and we're going to select from the props directory the gob saw in the left hand. Oh wait, did I already? Yeah, I already did. So I can go ahead and take him back down to goblin mode. Goblin. And let's give him a goblin knife in his right hand and a gob saw in his left. And so what we have is a goblin knife and a gob saw. Now, what kind of weird, funky, psycho pose are we going to put this schmuck in? Well, first, let's see if we can do a few things, like we're going to go ahead and see what happens if we stick a helmet on him. No, that one doesn't look right. See, what happens is the helmet tries to fit the morph the same way that it fit the human form. That doesn't work. So we delete that helmet. Now we're going to try this one. Now this one isn't a conformer. What this means is it's a solid static prop. You notice that it's now actually considered to be parented to the head, which means that the ears poke out. Which means I can go ahead and carve in what appear to be holes around the ears when it comes time. I can also grab this jaw and open it quite a bit so that you can see his mouth. And that's a bit too much. Yeah, there we go. Alright, now for the rest of this, we're actually going to hide the saws, the knife, and the helmet. And we want to do one more piece of clothing here, and that's we're going to give him a loincloth. No, we're not. It looks horrible like that. So what we're going to do, we're going to give him a tunic skirt. And we're going to hide it as well. Well, first, I keep forgetting, I need to change the mesh resolution up by 1. And then we're going to hide it. Now, we have our jointed base mail. We're going to click the hands and feet to make sure that every extremity has been extruded. We don't need to worry about the fingers because that's, you know, holding the weapon. So yeah, and hello. This is Daz Studio. I use it because I know the rigging. The actual geometry I made is made in 3D Studio Max. So I brought it in here to rig it so that I can pose and get a nice shape. Because one of the things that this program does, I made this goblin morph, you know, out of a normal human. Now, right now, you can see the bones, the parts that represent how it's jointed. When I activate the goblin morph, you'll notice they move and they stay with the figure instead of just leaving it behind. That is something that is easy to set up in this program. Once I have a pose that I like, props that I like, and the clothing or what will be the basic geometry for clothing, I will then export this into ZBrush and begin sculpting on it. This saves a lot of time. I made the morph by I took the human figure and joint by joint, let's say I make the chest and the shoulders narrower. And I made all of the, non-existent. I made all of the joints the right scale that I wanted. Then I took it into ZBrush and sculpted on details like the goblin's big ears, the chin, that nose, and then blended any other scale differences like the difference at the wrist and the ankles. Then I loaded it back in as a morph, or blend shape as some programs call it. Now, let me go ahead and come up, let's see. There's one cardinal rule with posing when it comes to the hips and the shoulders, and that's that you never have them perfectly parallel to each other or the ground. You always want them to be slightly angled, tilted, twisted, something. However, because the only time you will ever see someone with their hips and their shoulders perfectly parallel to the ground is a Marine or soldier standing at attention. You're not going to see it happen in real life unless they're mocking that. Even just standing it around, your hips cocked at an angle, your shoulders, one droops lower than the other. It's natural. It's what makes a pose look real. And this is not a real pose because these shoulders and hips are perfectly parallel to each other and to the ground. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, I'm going to grab this foot, and I'm going to kind of pull it up. That doesn't look right. So, the twist, that's why. Yeah, there we go. And then when I twist the what you just saw was what's called as my brain shuts down, inverse kinematics. Okay, what that means is normal kinematics is following the motion of an object and that object controlling. For example, I move my arm up here, that moves everything past it. But if I grab my hand, relax the arm, and move my hand somewhere else, the arm will change position to most naturally fit where the hand has been moved to or twisted. That's inverse kinematics. Normally it works best with certain types of posing and animation that have it already prepared, which, as you saw what happened to that leg. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bend the foot down a bit, and I've got to twist it. I'm going to bend it just a little bit more. Now, this is going out side to side quite a bit. The sole purpose of me being able to hit Control D, you can't quite see it on the broadcast, but there's actually a ground plane right below his foot. By dropping him like that, I can see the ground plane. So, I'm going to bring that back down a bit and bend back the leg. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the translation and rotation of this foot. Now, no matter what happens, the foot will try to stay where it is. So when I bend the hip, see, the foot is trying to stay stationary. I'm going to side to side the hip. I'm then going to, using these things, I'm going to grab right here and drag up just a little. There we go. Now I'm going to twist and unside to side that leg. I go back to my front view and I see that really and truly there's not much. I'm going to point it down and then I can bend the toe back up a bit and twist it, and I can unbend the foot, unbend the calf, and then unbend the toe a bit, and now I have that. Now what's happening here is kind of a problem. Yeah, I know, but it's something that will be pretty much covered by our tunic. So the hips are now not parallel to the ground. I'm going to cause the chest and abdomen at first in sync, and then I'm going to decouple them being in sync after I get to basic. I'm going to bend them back to the opposite side and twist. Then we're going to grab the chest and bend it forward just a little. Okay, actually I need to take the abdomen and bend it forward quite a lot and do a lot of the back bending from the chest to really drive the line of that motion. Now this shoulder will actually drop and go back a bit. Now I say shoulder, it's really the collarbone, whereas this one goes up and forward. The end result is similar to if I had done it from the chest, but it's actually different because this motion is what we are replicating with that. Now I'm going to twist the arm at the shoulder a little and at the collar a little. The difference is how much it moves the pectoral. I'm then going to lift it, pull it forward a little, twist a little bit more, and bend the forearm. Well, obviously from this I can already tell when I make that dagger visible, I want it to go above his head, so I'm going to twist it just a little bit more. Okay, I need to bend the chest back a lot because I want to try and move him to be balanced. I'm going to bend the abdomen back a little. I want him to be balanced over those feet. This also means I need to side at the abdomen a bit less, so that the front and back legs, blades, can cooperate and work together. Now, just to see what it looks like with the helmet and the loincloth. Yet another. This time is a goblin 2-weapon fighter. Yay! He looks like he's leaning too far to the right, but with that weapon there, it's going to tilt it back a little bit. I also want him to be just a little bit off balance, because I want there to be some kind of sense of motion. His center of gravity is right here, right, almost right at smack dab where the center of the chest is, in terms of looking at it from above. His center of gravity will be right about here. Yeah, and that's directly on the line between the toe and the foot. So he's going to be on balance. It's just he's significantly closer to the right foot than he is to the back foot. So now I'm going to hide the helmet, the sword, and the saw. Now one thing I'm going to do is going to be kind of odd. And that's, I'm going to start with the right thigh of him is twisted negative 17.14. So the right thigh of this positive 17.14. It smooths it out just a bit. And then the left thigh is 10 even. So the left thigh here will be negative 10 even. What that does is that makes it a little bit smoother around the legs themselves. Now, I'm going to go ahead and joint back. I'm going to hide the tunic skirt. And I'm going to export this. I have File, Export to my Broadcast Miniatures, New. And this is going to be Gobbo 2-Wep Body. That's Goblin 2-Weapon Body. And on the export, I set it to custom 100% scale. So that the scale I send it out is the scale it's going to end up being when it finally comes off the printer. I explicitly made these miniatures to be that scale. They come out as basically your heroic 32mm scale. So I accept. It exports whatever is on screen. So I then hide him. I make the bottom of the tunic visible. Export. I select that and just add in erase body, kilt. Then I hide that and I make the saws, dagger, and helmet visible. And I export these. And I change body to props. Now, I'm about to be bad and open up my window and you'll see echoey. Yeah, I can see me. So, we're going to go ahead and skip over it here, just so you don't get it very much. Now, this is what happens when you first open ZBrush. You'll notice over here there's what looks like a star, and if we click in the monitor and drag down, we get a star. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move this down, because you need to see what I'm about to do here. Over here, there's a button marked Edit. You've got to click that in order to be able to actually have something other than a static image. Then go over here to Subtool, have it selected, and import. Well, we're going to our Broadcast Miniatures, New, Gobbo 2-Weapon Body, and it replaces that. Before we do anything else, because it's been driving me crazy, and it's something I really do kind of have to fix, I hit Shift and brush over, and it smooths out that problem with the front of the thigh, even though it would be hidden by the tunic. Now you'll notice this is still a relatively low polygon figure. What we do is we go to Append, and we select that star again. And here I import the kilt. And then finally I append the star one more time. I select it, and here we import the weapon and props. Now I'm going back to the kilt and I'm going to hide the props, because what's going to happen here is going to be basically I'm going to be moving the basic shapes of the kilt or bottom of the tunic to better fit. So I'm making the mouse larger, because one of the things we're doing is we're grabbing under here and kind of pulling out just a bit. But before we even finish that, I need to make sure that I've got enough space to pull out the bottom of the tunic. I'm going to do something similar here. Pulling it out forward. I'm then zooming in, shrinking the mouse, and with a shift, whoa, that's too strong. Let's lower this intensity. With this shift, we're going to go ahead and kind of get rid of this wrinkle right in here. Well, not get rid of, but even out a little bit. Now when you hit shift as you turn, it jerks straight to one of the cardinal directions, so to speak. By hitting shift here, now what I'm doing is I'm kind of blending out that. Now I'm going to the top of these sections and pulling them inside the skin, because when it comes time to blend this all together, the more of it that's closer to the skin, the easier it'll be to divide it all up and blend it all together into a single manifold surface. And so we're going to grab him, grab him. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be kind of close. I'll grab here, pull it in, pull it in, pull it in. Okay. Oh, got a little bit here, not a lot, just a little bit. Alright, now we'll hit frame to zoom out. And what we're going to do is we're going to merge this top one with the bottom one. I hit merge down and it says this is not an undoable operation. Press OK to continue or cancel to abort. And did it show up? Yes, it did. Excellent. Always OK. I do that one as always OK so that you can see, you know, anytime in the future I do it, I don't need to worry about it. Now, before we shrink it down and do all the other things, one other problem we're going to have is this mouth. I got to shrink this mouse and deal with this mouth. Let's bring it back up to 100% smoothing, and I smooth out the mouth area. What smoothing does is it averages a vertex with those around it within the reach of the mouse that you're using, which means that this inset for the mouth, well, it's still clearly an inset, now no longer goes so deep you'd need supports. I now click the geometry tab over here. I'm going to subdivide it a couple times until it looks rather smooth. Subdivision level 4, just to warn you, that's subdivision 1 is where you start with no subdivisions. Subdivision 4 is clicking divide 3 times. I click delete lower, I have 1.61 million when you combine the gobbo and his tunic. That's active points right here. Total points includes the hidden props. We don't need to worry about them. But now I'm going to Dynamesh, and I'm going to 768, the blur of 0. This should end up somewhere around 400,000 to 600,000 triangles. I click the button, Oh, nope. I forgot to hit enter. 768, enter. And change it like that. Blur, 0, enter. Dynamesh, 599. Almost 600,000. Excellent. Now, before I do anything else, I'm coming over here and smoothing over where the bottom of the tunic meets the body. And this gets rid of these artificial seams that happen where the two parts met. It also, not uncoincidentally, manages to turn it all into a single manifold surface. What that means is there's no overlapping geometry, no intersecting geometry. Everything is a watertight surface. This also means that I can go back in here where I had that problem with the mouth, and that one small bit right in here can now make it go bye-bye. And a similar one up top, up above it. Okay, now we frame out. And I'm going to take a brief pause to get a bit of soda. Now, the next thing that we can do, I'm going to go ahead and just for the heck of it, I've got our props ready. I'm going to select all of the polygons for the helmet. Whoop. No. No. Alright, anyway. Now I'm going to split unmasked parts. What that just did is now the helmet is a subtool and the weapons are a separate one. Reason being is I'm going to do a little bit of sculpting to the helmet. 2, 3, 450,000 polygons. Let's frame the helmet. Alright. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to layer. L-A-Y-E-R. I don't know what you thought I said. And we are going to lazy mouse. We are turning off lazy mouse. We are turning it to a subtract, and we're turning it up pretty high. And now we're breaking open the Wacom tablet. By the way, hi Kim. Oh. And with the Wacom tablet, we are going to start sculpting away with erasing, not so much erasing, but creating the hole around the ear. Except we need to make it stronger and a little bit larger because we're going to come around the ear. No, that doesn't look right. So we need to go ahead and zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to start from here. The idea is that the hole is crude and kind of hacked in to the side of the helmet. Let's turn lazy mouse back on and get to our angle so we can see it. Okay. I'm just going to smooth it a bit more. Then we're going to hit 1. No, that didn't come out right. Turn the lazy radius up, and let's try it with a much smoother hole. And I hit 1. No. However, that is pretty deep a hole. That should be good enough. So we come over here and do something similar. Now, we're going to our subtool again and hiding the body. Yes, that is something I do end up saying quite a lot here. Hiding the body. And I'm just going to smooth this part of it. The reason being is because this way, any section that kind of impedes or it pokes through the ear will, you know, it'll be part of it. It won't be like an edge suddenly at the corner of the ear like right here. By hiding the body and then smoothing this whole section takes away any potential edges that might be where we don't want them. So now we hit that. Okay. Frame out. Zoom out just to show us what it looks like. It's pretty clear that it looks like it's a normal helmet that I've had horn cut or holes cut in it for the ears. However, we need to do one more thing. We need to make this, well, we need to get a regular move. No move, top polygons, yeah. Make this bigger and pull it away from the nose. Those goblins also got big noses. Now we hit frame. Yay! Now, he's got a helmet, he's got two weapons, and he's got a pose. We know he's wearing either a kilt or a tunic, but we don't know what yet. Oh, what Lazy Mouse does, I'm going to be mean to this poor guy. I'm going to get a brush called the Orb Slash brush. To do that, I go to Program Files, Pixelogic, and ZBrush 2018, and some brushes I downloaded earlier. The Orb Cracks brush. I shrink this mouse. I go up here, turn Lazy Mouse off. Now when I draw with the Lazy Mouse, or without the Lazy Mouse, it follows whatever I do. However, it's a little jagged if I'm wanting to do something kind of natural looking curves. It works better as more of a random. I turn Lazy Mouse on, the high radius. You see the little red line following. Instead of drawing at my mouse, it's drawing at the end of the red line. And that ends up giving us smoother curves. Now, as to why I didn't just, you know, remove these sections right here, because I don't have to. Because they're already completely hidden by the goblin ears. And when I come time to fuse all of this together, it's going to be one surface anyway. So all that is extra effort that I did not have to do. And it would do nothing because it would have absolutely no effect on the final product. Now looking over here, I can see that there is some issues I do need to worry about. I need to go ahead and let's make sure. What? Oh yeah. It would help if I actually had the right, to kind of inflate back here and then smooth it a bit. and smooth it a good bit more. The reason for this is, number one, that evens out all of the polygons in that spot. And two, because I got to come in here and undercut under the underarm, because that underarm wasn't behaving like an underarm. I may have gone too far. Yes, I did. And then just a little bit down here, and then smooth it out. Yeah. Because this will likely be a tunic. I might make him bare-chested, which is the only reason I've even started doing this. And once again, we've got to try and make underneath the underarm pretty smooth. He's not a Herculean character, so he does not need those massive, massive muscles. It does not need to be pumped up. He's a goblin. Oh, I need to add, not subtract. Like when you go to the gym, you're going to add, not subtract. There we go. Yeah. No, stop that. Come down. From the front. There we go. Bing. Now, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to give him a belt for the kilt, and a couple straps, and then some stuff on his arms. Unlike the orcs that I made, they're not going to be standard troop type figures. These are going to be more unique character types with my weird goblin-esque look. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to hold down Control and bring this focal shift. Now what focal shift does when I'm trying to draw on a mask, this is a focal shift -100. This is a focal shift total 100, and this and this show the higher the focal shift, the blurrier the results. In this case, it was so focal shifted that it barely even acknowledged that it was hitting polygons. So with a high focal shift, we're going to get a much sharper, higher resolution. Now I'm going to give it a level of subdivision because I want more precision than what I was seeing there. There, that's a lot better. So I'm going to use the bracket keys to make them, you make the mouse smaller and larger. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off up here. Make a stroke and you turn. ZBrush changes the point of rotation to be where you last stroked. So, like right there, that was fine. But then I come over here, when I rotate, what? I don't know what caused that, but Now, what this is going to be, I'm going to extract this at 0.02. Accept, and now I have a new subtool over here. It's currently masked. I just unmasked it, but on here I've still got the masking on the main body, so I also have to just kind of draw out here to turn that off. Now this is going to be the top of the kilt. Now we want it to be 256 because we want a decent sharp edge up top, and then make the mouse a lot bigger, and we hit smooth, which in this case is shift. The reason for this is because this is going to actually be the top of the kilt under the belt. I'm actually going to put a full belt with belt loops on it this time, not just a regular belt. Now I'm seeing a small problem. If you look over here, there's an aspect that's not behaving well. So I'm going to shrink the mouse quite a lot. I'm going to grab it with a move topological brush. What the heck? There we go. Burp. Now when I hit smooth, well... Anyway, what's going to happen now, we're going to subdivide it a couple times. We go back up to subtool and we're going to merge down. Once again, go back to geometry and Dynamesh. It stays at 768. And now we can come in and hit the smooth and blend this all together into one single solid garment. And what's going to happen is we're then going to select a portion of the garment to turn into the belt in a similar way, but without fusing it all together. And we had to do that subdivision to get that nice sharp line. Now I'm going to draw on a nice broad selection path. Oh, Control Shift click hides everything but that part. Click it again and it hides that part. So I'm going to hide this stupid forearm that keeps getting in my way as I'm trying to draw on this belt. Nice and straight. Okay, I can already tell I need to go ahead and just erase that right there because I went off center thanks to that. Okay, now I'll bring it just... Actually, I need to come back like this. And then come back around after I've... Because I need to kind of stay up near the top, but not at the top. And that's going to erase the bottom portion of this curve. Okay. Now, I'm going to erase that because it needs to be a little bit more closer to the line. And from here, we're going to come back around there. Okay. Now I'm going to extract it under Subtool. So I'm going to extract it at 0.03. Extract. Accept. Now looking at it, that's just way too thick. So I'm going to select that particular subtool. Delete. Okay. I go back to body. It's still... That's exactly why. 0.02. Extract. Accept. There. And then we're going back to him. Nice. Finally, we go back to the geometry on this guy. And 256, Dynamesh. Fine. We're going to divide it a couple times because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use this to make our belt loops. And I'm not a fan of Elminster. Well, see, if I had two screens, it'd be a lot easier for me to see chat over here, just as an example, instead of having to pull it up like I just did. Belt loops, actually, no, I think we're going to start on him. We're going to use the belt loops on him. And what we're going to do is I'm going to shrink this down a bit. A little bit wider, and I'm just going to draw on some straight lines. That one was just for measuring distance. I hate it when it does that. It tries to save in the middle of a stroke, and the end result is I get that hiccupy stroke. Now what's going to happen is after I've made these all these belt loops, I'm not going to put one in here. I'm now going to make the belt visible again, and I'm going to make it, you know, erase the bottom of it, make it about like almost a square underneath, because we don't want it to be too long. And by making it roughly square, it's easy to repeat the right length. That's too short. I need to kind of refine that corner. Okay. Then I'm going to hide this again. And I'm going to make sure that I have this going to there. See, that's the thing. I do 3D graphics for a living, and yet I only have one screen, one monitor. I'm one of the very few people I know who has only one monitor that does 3D graphics. I mean, it's just like de rigueur nowadays. Now going to erase the absolute top portions of these. Now, I know that there are those of you who wonder why I do some things with the mouse and some things with a tablet, and that's because that's the single most common question I get. And the reason is that it's like the difference between a rattle can and an airbrush. You know, sometimes you need the full-on spray power and motion of the rattle can, and sometimes you need the precision and variable coverage of the airbrush. Okay, now I hit Control Shift, click out here, and everything comes back. I make the belt visible again, and I am now going to extract at 0.03. Extract. Accept. Draw. And draw. Now, I hit go to geometry. I'm just going to Dynamesh as it is and divide it once. Delete lower. And what we get is that. Now, onto our belt itself, I'm going to tilt it a little bit, zoom in, hide our body, and I'm going to select a large amount of the front. I'm going to turn it a little bit, and I'm going to deselect a large amount. I'm going to turn it a little bit, rotate, come back around. No, there we go. And I'm going to deselect just to there. Okay. Now I'm going to make this extract at 0.02. Accept, draw, draw. And then this sucker, we're going to dynamesh it at 120. Oh, ahem. This sucker. Yeah, how about that, ZBrush? We're going to dynamesh at 128. We're then going to use the slash brush. We're going to turn off Dynamouse because it comes in loaded on a lazy mouse. It's automatically loaded. We're going to turn it down quite a bit. Make it add instead of subtract. And then with just a very light, faint line across the top. And then once more. A similar one across the bottom. Once more. And then up here. Oh, no. We can leave that in as is. Let's go ahead and we're going to subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower. One more time. And now we're going to go ahead and kind of refine this corner. And this one down here. This one down here, and this one up here. We're then going to turn down the strength quite a bit. And now we're going to drape across. And here. And then hit it with the smooth. Okay, and that's, we have our basic. Let's shrink this. Our basic shape for our belt buckle. But what we're going to do with it is we're going to just draw on a few things using that orb crack brush I showed earlier. Actually, if I draw out, yeah. If I Z sub, there we go. So I'm going to turn the lazy mouse on and turn down that radius a good bit, just so I can have a decent curve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swoop down here. I'm going to hit 1, 1, 1, just to yep, and then a layer. Shrink it and turn off lazy mouse. Z add. And smooth. And it's going to add in one there. Whoop. One there. One there. And there. Just to give it a little bit of a rivet look to it. Now let's go ahead, since I saw that we have to, let's subdivide those belt loops. Now we're going to fuse all of these parts of the belt together by merging them all down. There. Okay, what the difference for all of these brushes is. Excuse me. I something fell on my foot. Each one has a different effect on the mesh. When it comes to, let's go ahead and draw on his chest just a little bit to show you. Okay. Layer. Layer brushes go even an exact amount, even if you go back over top. See? It came out the same amount on the surface, even when we went over top of itself. And it works the same way in reverse. It digs in. It's great for like flattening areas, you know, stuff like that, and then you smooth it to blend it in. For example, if I decided to give him some nice rends, in fact, let's do that. We're going to give him a decent size tear on this leg. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and draw on where the tear would be. The missing cloth, so to speak. And that, as long as I don't lift the mouse from the tablet. There. Now, I could then go back in and using the layer add and add in a little bit here, and then hit shift and smooth out the edge. Well, that is now where part of it digs in very deep at the center, but not very deep on the edge, and what's more, it pulls in the geometry. So by making this a kind of a smaller slash and not that very strong, I can draw the back line of that fold. Now, that turned out not to be strong enough. I tap the number 1 and it repeats the stroke I just did. For example, I can come ahead and come under that fold we made and hit 1, and it looks a lot better. It looks a lot more like a fold. I then hit add. Add does the exact opposite. It draws everything towards it, yes, but it pulls it out towards the edge. So now this little orc has a torn hole in his little skirt right there. Now, the next thing is there are 2 other major brushes I really use. Well, 3. Standard. Standard, what it does, let's increase that intensity quite a bit and turn off lazy mouse. It basically just moves the geometry in the direction that the window is. It just kind of pulls it out in big chunks. Or pushes it in. Or in small chunks. It's great for doing basic detailing. Inflate, instead of moving in the direction that I'm in, it moves in the direction that the vertex faces. You see how it's kind of started to overlap right here because the bottom of the chest, or top of the chest and the bottom of the pectoral were facing in different directions. So they start going in they start fusing together. When we go up here to the chin, you'll see that I just caused the bottom of the chin and the top of the neck, or top of the collarbone, to fuse because of how it works. I hit Control Z and it goes back. That's good for things like muscles. Not at that strength, but you know, you can take your muscles and inflate them in the direction that the muscle would inflate. And then there's move. There's 2 kinds of move. Move topological, I grab and I drag Now the thing about move topological is, as I pointed out here, the chin is really close to the chest. I can grab that chin and move it with, well, oh yeah, I made the mouse too big. I can grab the chin and move it without warping the chest. Or better yet, better explanation, let me show you on the fingers. No, because I already fused the fingers. Anyway, move topological only moves things that are connected to the point at its center, whereas regular move moves everything. You can see it down here, where when I did it with the topological, it didn't move all that. That's some basics on what the different brushes are. Now, by masking, whether it's just simply drawing across like that, or I hold Control and draw on the figure. One thing that I've done is, no matter what I do to this figure, like move, it won't happen to the area that's been masked. The other is, when I make a subtool, I go over here to extract, and it extracts what I've masked off as a new subtool. So, we're going to use that once more. We're going to the next stage, which is we're going to make some boots. Boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats. Anyway, yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw on the tops of these boots that he's wearing. We're going to give him some hobnailed boots, where the steel toe is a literal steel toe nailed on with attitude. Yes. Which is totally separate from teenagers with attitude, who are totally useless force to try to get to fly your giant robots. I don't care what Zordon said. You don't want anyone with an attitude flying your multi-billion-dollar giant mystical pseudo-scientific robot warrior god things, because they will tear stuff up. I can guarantee. I mean, you don't see the people in BattleTech handing out, you know, multi-trillion-dollar battle mechs to 16-year-old kids from Angel High, do you? No. You don't see Gundam. Oh, wait. Never mind. And no, Fuzz. No, little buddy. I almost got pounced by a fuzzbutt. Okay, we changed this thickness back to 0.025. I changed this thickness based on estimating what will show well on a final product. In this case, the size of the boots. And we're going to Dynamesh 256. Again, this is mostly from experience. I tend to, not always, but I tend to get the best results with 128 for really soft things, 256 for more harder edge things like leather or metal, and 768 for the actual figure itself, or for really complex stuff. Now what we're doing here is we're kind of fusing them into the calf, so that when I merge it all together, these will be easy to make part of the figure. Now I'm lowering it because I'm getting way too much effect above where I want it to. I'm getting this sharp line where I stop using the mouse. Like right here, I'm seeing a smart line. So I'm getting rid of it with a softer touch brush. Okay. I mean, as it is right now, it already looks like it's part of this boots. So now we're undo the Dynamesh. We're going to subdivide it a couple times. and delete lower. We're going to leave it as is for right now, because the next step is going back up here to the main body, drawing to make sure we get rid of that, and then we're going to select, actually, yeah, we need to rotate. We're going to select like this, there, and then come on down. And then here. And this is going to be our steel toes. We're going to extract it as is, accept, and draw, and draw. Now we're going to the geometry, 256 resolution, Dynamesh, and we're going to subdivide it a couple times, delete lower. And now you'll notice that they almost look more like slippers. Well, the bottoms of these are going to be hidden by the base that we're putting them on, and they will cease to be part of the geometry once we've done that. Well, I'm going to inflation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing on the rivets. And the way I'm doing this is that's way too big. I'm giving it one level of the base and delete lower. I'm going to draw on here, and then 1, 2, here, 2, here, no, nope, no, that's way too much. Yeah, there we go. Nope. There we go. And that's giving us our rivets. Not to be confused with the sounds that a frog makes. There. Now, as we can see, he has his, he still has his blades to go. But for the most part, our little goblin is ready to go kick some ass. It's what we've got to do now is kind of detail him a bit more. For example, let's go ahead on his helmet. Let's give him some fancy little engraving bits. And we're going to do that with the orb crack button or tool. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of draw in with just a little bit of lazy mouse. I'm going to draw in some of the little swirly cues that are often seen curved in. Let's hit 1 to come up, come back, and get them down. Just some little to emphasize that this was a stolen helmet. And then by making it parody and not something that goblins would normally have, we're sitting here and making it paradoxically even more goblin-y. Okay. So this comes up, down, and around. Oh. Jump up, and get down. Hide the body. There we go. So we're going to come back up here, loop around, 2, and 1. And up, down, and around. And hitting 1. What hitting 1 does is it replays the stroke exactly. This lets us basically double up on something that would otherwise be a bit of a pain to repeat. And then here. And thus we have our fancy little helmet. Next thing is, we should give him something on his forearms. Now, in the case of the right arm, it doesn't need much. But we really need to give this left arm a bracer, something to say, "This is what I am proud of as a goblin." Although it's more like, "Dude, look at this. Ain't it cool?" Okay, then we kind of tilt it kind of that way. Tilt it back a bit. And then come around to here. Bing. Okay, that's going to be our bracer for the goblin's right arm. And we're going to extract this at 0.3. That's a lot, I know. But we want it to really look thick and bigger, and that's not enough. 0.05. Accept. Draw. Draw. Now on this sucker, what we're going to do, we're going to start off up here up top. We're going to select the whole thing with a move brush. With a really big move brush. And a big, and a really big focal shift. And we're going to, let's see, where's gravity? Kind of like that. We're going to grab the whole thing and kind of move it like it's too big for him. Now we're going to shrink the draw size back to normal and move the focal shift back to 50 or 0. Okay, so his bracer's kind of hanging off his right arm. We're going to go back to /subtract about 14. I'm going to shrink the mouse and make sure we don't have that. And what we're going to use this for, after hiding the helmet, yeah, that's the helmet. We're going to zoom in. Oh, we need to dynamesh this at 256 because we want it kind of sharp. And then we're going to subdivide it. Move. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to, actually no, we're going to go to layer. No. I know what we're going to do. We're going to draw on 2 bits here. We're then going to masking, and we're going to grow the mask. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to invert the mask. And with deformation, we're going to inflate it. Actually, no, let's blur it one last time because we want it to be an even. So we go and inflate it so it's sticking out. And that is our straps for this bracer. And now that we have it on slash, we can start here and nope. We need a little bit bigger and a good bit stronger. Okay. And then we're going to hide our body because it's going to be in the way. Yep. Okay, there we go. That is just to give it its shape. Now, we're going to use the move tool here for this next little trick. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it dented with different sized dents. That's way too big. So we shrink it. Just kind of make it all look kind of beat up. The guy. Now the last thing is actually, well, there's two things we got to do, definitely. Well, three things we got to do, definitely, absolutely. And we've got about 40 minutes to do them, so we should have enough time. Okay? Next up is the hands. What's happening is we need to make those hands look like real hands and not like Vienna sausages connected to bean bags. The second thing that we've got to do is add some wrinkles to his tunic bottom. And the third thing is we've got to detail these weapons a bit. Okay, so we go back up to him, and what we're going to do is we're going to get the inflate tool and make sure the mouse is about the same size as your fingers, maybe just a little bit. Like this is a little small, this is a little large. I look here and I see that the small one is 14, the large one is 18, so I click draw size 16. It'll be different on every figure, because it's based on document size, it's based on the size within its memory, not the actual dimensions. So his hands are larger in proportion than a human's, so he'll need a larger inflate brush. And all of those were way too large, because I have it currently set up way large thanks to me giving a demonstration. Okay, now I add on to where the base of the knuckles will be. I draw down to the back of the hand where the tendons for a lot of people are, and then smooth out, well, smooth out the bottoms of these. Okay. Then, using the pinky as my guide, I'm going to mark off where the other knuckles will be. And of course the ring and index are both slightly larger and are equal to each other. And the middle finger is even larger. Then I blend. Then I blend the knuckles to themselves. sorry. That was Your Night, a parody of Les Mis. Now what this does is this not only gives us the shape of our knuckles, it also helps straighten out the segments of the fingers themselves. Now we've got to solve a problem while we're here, and that's the problem that's common, and that's the inside of this joint in the thumb. We're also going to fuse it with that joint in the forefinger. Alright, we're going to come back and finish it in just a minute, because we've got to do... Oh, come on. We've got to do this arm, too, or this hand. You really can't copy and mirror your paths if the figure's not mirrored to begin with. And it really isn't. So, now that it's already been sculpted on, it really, you really can't mirror your paths anymore. Because the geometry that ZBrush is receiving is not symmetrical. It doesn't know what's supposed to go where. Smooth out the bottom of this. Pinky as your guide. That's not something you hear every day. Usually people keep telling you to use their middle finger as a guide, eh? Yeah. And then smooth the bases of each of these joints. On something like an elf or, some other character or figure with a much more by nature graceful hand, you won't have as large of a work on these knuckles as what we're doing. They'll be smoothed in a bit more. Okay, and once again we got to inflate the inside of this part of the thumb. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch to slash, because what we got to do is we got to divide between the fingers. And try to keep it as even as possible. And then the last joint. If this was a human, he would have also probably had hair poking out. Now, you can see these arms, the hands, are a lot less marshmallowy. They don't look like Vienna sausages anymore. I gotta draw in the division for these fingers. And then here. Oh. Hmm. There we go. Now we're going to hide the weapons once again. And we're going to go down to our tunic. Now, hold on just a second. You probably didn't see this, but we've got a spy. A spy that wants his lovings. No. 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 You gotta stay up here just for right now. After the broadcast, you can hop on my shoulders and do what and just lay against my head all you want. Yes, that's Carlton. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add in. We're only going to give it some. It's going to sound odd. There's not going to be as many wrinkles with a goblin kilt as there would be with a regular one, simply because it's a weaker, or it's a cruder, stiffer material. You know, it's like, instead of being something like cotton or wool, it's like very crude linen or something, or stolen linen. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down very simple basic shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very faint smoothing onto this until it stops being an overlap. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then from this side, we're going to come up from the tear, and one from above the tear. Whoop. From above the tear. No. Meanwhile, I've got a lot of friends who are really mad at something that happened this week in Memphis, Tennessee, home of the Civil Rights Museum. I really shouldn't talk about it because I really don't want to get into politics, but it's something that made a lot of the people who are anti-racist angry. Anyway, now I'm going to subtract a little bit higher intensity below each of, not quite that far below, or not that close, below each of these wrinkles, and then hit it with a smooth brush. Because what we're doing is we're turning these into, like I said, the actual wrinkles. When sculpting cloth, you want something that's going to work for both of the major techniques used for cloth. I'm not saying they're the only ones, just the most common ones that I have seen. Not necessarily among pro painters, but definitely among the guys who are just trying to get their army ready for the tabletop or their figure ready for the campaign. And that's a dry brush and the wash. The dry brush is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. You get paint on your brush and you make sure it's almost dry. Okay, and there we go. We got some basic wrinkles on the thingy. Now let's make those weapons visible. Now the goblin knife might be a bit more, potentially fancy than the Warsaw. Did you know the Warsaw came from Poland? Yes, I said that. I'm a bad boy. Anyway. You might draw a couple cracks in the blade on the Warsaw, but on the knife, we're going to decorate it a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the orb crack brush, shrink it, and I'm going to start adding in weird Chthonic runes. Well, to do that, I need to turn off Lazy Mouse. And then it's not going to be like, ultra highly detailed mage thingy, but just some kind of crude, like, runic thing for blood from a goblin. Or even full moon while you're standing alone. Without a care in my heart, or a love of my own. Yeah. That's all we really need on the knife. With the saw, we're going to make it bigger and not quite as deep. And we're going to draw on a crack going the length of it. Okay. So I'm going to hide the body so I can see the saw a bit better. Okay, so this goes across here. And then another zigzag there. To make it kind of look like it's broken. Okay. Frame out. Make the body visible. Frame out some more. And zoom out. Now, we have our basic figure. I'm pretty certain that we can call this guy done. Except for one last thing we really got to do. We need to take these and move them up and then merge him down and then dynamesh him. Reason being is because that was the tops of our boots. We need to make sure those are smoothed in. And then come around and hit this. Hit that side of that one. Underside. Underside. Make sure that they look like boots and not like, weird anklets. Zoom out. And we're going to our new we're going to go ahead and merge all our subtools. And we're going to add one more. This is going to be our base. Now, I'd already decided that all my goblins are going to go on the rocky base. The bases, well, let me go ahead and go back all the way up to my desktop. Meshes, resculpt miniatures, bases, base Rocky. Now, the base Rocky, let's turn off perspective, is way too high. So grab it, we go to deformation and offset by Y. And we're going to offset until it's roughly even. And for the most part, that's pretty good. Let's rotate it randomly on the Y. Yeah, there we go. Go back to Y, and we need to kind of bring it up just a little bit. Whoa! There we go. That should be good. Now we go and merge down. This is going to be our Goblin Gladiator. Because that's what he makes me think of. I don't know about you. Alright, so now I can take the tablet and put it up. I use 32mm heroic, Andrew. And hello. So, the next thing we have to do right now, as it stands, he's not just 3.2 million polygons. He's 3.2 million polygons that are multiple shells. So what I have to do is I have to go ahead, first of all, I have to Dynamesh again. And what that's going to do, that's going to turn this entire thing into one shell with no overlaps and watertight. And it also drops us down to 1.943 million polygons. That's up here at the top, right above, you know, right where it says title. That's a bit too much to print, wouldn't you say? Because most of your slicers aren't going to be able to handle it. So we go up here to where it says Z plugin. And there's a little circle with a line through it. I click it, and it moves over here. And go to Decimation Master. Yes, Decimation Master. Standard is 28mm now, but there's also 32mm heroic. So, my goblins will be about the size of a human in the small, compared to the small end of 28. And properly goblin-y compared to the larger, more heroic size. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click 35K. What this should do is it should change the points up here where it says active points to from 1.922 million to about 35,000. And it should change the polygons from 1.943 million to about 70,000. I open this back up, make sure Dynamesh is turned off, and click 35K. And as you can see up there at the top, it says Analyzing Mesh. And then it'll give us a little green or orange bar that'll start going across the top. And processing with a percentage. When it gets to 100%, it'll do a couple other things. Reading go Z file, and then give us our final polygon count. Now it will be all triangles. When you decimate something, it converts entirely to triangles. It calculates which ones can I keep and which ones do I need to merge into one face. And writing file to disk. Computing, please wait. Reading go Z file. End up with 70,251 triangles. It's still quite a bit, but when you consider that it's that many for every bit of detail on here, when we zoom in, you can see that, for example, that blade has lost a lot of its polygons except in the area of the slash. The rounder areas like the flesh have kept more than the flatter areas like the blade and so on and so forth. And the bottom of the base, look at that. That's what decimation does, is it calculates what do I need to keep as much detail in as few polygons as possible. So this is our Goblin Gladiator. So I'm going to go ahead up here to where it says export. Go back to my broadcast miniatures new. I'm going to call this Goblin Gladiator figure. Save. It's going to export in the OBJ format. I will use another program to resave it as an STL for those who prefer STLs. And come back to here. So, to make it from 32 heroic to 28 millimeter, it's closer to print it at like 88 to 85%. If you want to make it more of the classic 25 millimeter, because remember, the millimeter height is to eye high. 28 millimeters to the eyes, 29 or 32 to the eyes. That program is ZBrush. You can get ZBrush Core with all of the functions that you would need to do what I just did with some Wacom tablets. It's also about $100 on its own. I don't know if they still have ZBrush Core. I don't. But that's the full version simply because I use it for my real-world daytime job. The only things missing in ZBrush Core that really make any kind of difference is texturing tools. You won't have that in the Core version. You'll have it in the full version, which is like $850, $900. You don't need to worry about it unless you've got money to toss. But yeah, that is the sculpted Gladiator Goblin. In previous shows, instead of having the entirety of my screen with a little bit blacked out saying, "You can't see my taskbar," I just had capturing the window for ZBrush, which means the drop-down menus didn't show. By doing it this way, I hope that it showed a lot better. Now, some of you, like Kim, know that I actually have the basic geometry files. The human male, the human female, several forms of clothing to put on them, and several props, like swords, and magic spells to be casting, and stuff like that, available on my Patreon. It is not just slap together and use. Basically it's a way to create base geometry. If you don't want to get ZBrush, you can do, I would assume, almost everything I just did in a different technique, in a different manner, but everything is just the same in Blender sculpting tools, in Sculptress. Both of those are free. In Mudbox, which is also kind of expensive, and so on. So, if you're not one of my patrons, well, my patrons get one free sculpt done live on a show like this on Sundays. In fact, for the past 2 weeks, I've had, last week and this week, 2 live shows. One at 1, one at 6 Central Time, U.S. I also get a, if they want it, they can choose not to get it. If they want it, a resin print, you know, resin print of the figure sent to them, and they get those files, which are used with the program DAZ Studio. I include rules, instructions on how to install them and how to use them, and then just by following along as I do these live shows, you can see, for example, okay, you load him in, turn a dial and he turns into a goblin, turn another dial, he turns into a dragonborn, and then you grab the various body parts and move them to create the pose that you want. You export that to ZBrush or Sculptress or Blender, and you can then just make your figure exactly as you want it to be. Anyway, yeah, don't forget to do the whole like and subscribe. Yes, I am sponsored by Anycubic for their photon. That's because they gave me the photon that I use to print out these miniatures. You know, all of these wonderful, magnificent figures of my characters, and like this. This is a dwarven monk that I carved for a patron. This is my dragonborn druid that I'm using in the Wednesday night game. Yeah. Let me go ahead and pull up so I can show you. I do paint these. This is my so-called wild dragonborn. I use it to represent my dragonborn druid on my Wednesday night games. I used to be on Twitch. I had a lot of followers and nobody ever watched. It might be easy to follow, but no one ever watched. And I don't know about you, that just kind of, it's rough when you're doing the broadcast and nobody's watching. Here on YouTube, my slowest night has been busier than my busiest night on Twitch. I brush by hand. To be exact, Army Painter paints with a few Vallejo model color here and there. Yeah, even 1 or 2 game colors. So, now the description of the video has my Thingiverse site, which after I get done broadcasting, I'll be running through the stuff to, I'll render a preview of the figure, and I'll be sending the preview, the object file, and the STL file up to Thingiverse. It has my Discord, and it has my Patreon. And yes, Kim is a patron. I have never used Tamiya paints on a tabletop miniature because they're not water-based. Tamiya paints are good for plastic model kits, not so much for tabletop miniatures. The techniques used to paint with tabletop miniatures don't work well with the hard enamel paints. Excellent, Stephen. Thank you. I have never seen Tamiya acrylics. I've only seen Tamiya enamel. Yeah, layering works okay with acrylics, I guess, and so would wet blending, but washes, dry brushing, glazing, a lot of those don't work so well with the enamel paints. .25mm Romans. I have not seen non-World War II 25mm historicals in a long time. The last time I saw 25mm historicals, they were actually, I think it was an Egyptian army fighting Assyrians in 98, 99. Okay, well, I've never used an airbrush, Peter. Thank you, though. That is good to know. Well, I have used an airbrush. It was a disaster. Yeah. Yeah, Ian Lovecraft has some really nice stuff, especially some of the more recent stuff he's had up on his Kickstarter. There's a Facebook group, 3D printed tabletop. It's actually the Facebook group for the 3D printing game master on YouTube, Danny Herrero, who has recently blown our brains apart with this amazing Kickstarter for dragons, but don't really apply for Roman legionnaires. So anyway, I should note that I am also planning a Kickstarter soon. All I will say is it's Titanic, and it's not a boat. I remember, well, see, one thing I remember was back in the 90s. It was either the late 90s or, no, it was the early 2000s. There was a side game by Games Workshop called Inquisitor. Inquisitor was 54mm scale. This means all of the figures were just over or almost 2.5 inches tall, because most of them weren't fully human. You know, like your Eldar are going to be a lot taller than humans. Your Space Marines are supposed to be 8 foot tall, although they're usually only a hair bigger than the humans. Anyway, so but yeah, so what we used to do is we used to take the Inquisitor models and paint them various shades of bronze and a little bit of greenish to make them into bronze statues on the street corners of imperial cities for 40K terrain. It's better than trying to paint them up. They were amazingly sculpted. They were gorgeous. But the game was... okay. To date, in my opinion, the best side games Warhammer ever came out with. For the fantasy side, you had Mighty Empires and Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl has stood the test of time. On the 40K side, you had Necromunda and Battlefleet Gothic. Those, well, with an honorable mention for 40K Epic, which is what used to be the original Adeptus Titanicus, but you know, where you had an inch tall figure was actually a instead of being a human figure, 6 foot, was actually a 30-foot miniature Titan, you know, blah. But those are my favorite side games, and the only ones that have really... Necromunda has been reprinted by Black Library, and I think they've made the PDFs available free. Same thing with Battlefleet Gothic. And then Fantasy, Mighty Empires has vanished into the mists of time. Yeah, lead, you can't get lead anywhere for any reason anymore for miniatures because it's deemed too great a threat for little ones to stick in their mouths. Hey, see, toy. Chew toy. Ooh, I got lead poisoning. Ooh. So anyway, it is now 10 o'clock. And I do believe I am going to be going ahead and signing off here. The way I handled signing off on YouTube is the same as I always do for YouTube. I hold up my hand here so I can see it on the screen because I've got my broadcast screen right here. And then right behind it is the YouTube screen. And I go ahead and count down to 1, and when I see it go to 1, I stop the broadcast. And that's it for tonight. I'd like to thank you. Reminder that I am sponsored by Anycubic. Yes, I know I don't talk about them much, but it's easy mode for printing miniatures, really and truly. I mean, this figure. Where is he? Yeah. This figure was actually printed on my CR10. It is possible to get really nice looking miniatures off of an FDM machine. It's just really hard. Anyway, I've seen some amazing stuff come off an Ender 3 lately. Anyway, so here's my hand. And that's going to be a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2. Don't forget my Patreon. And it's a 1.